It's my great pleasure to begin this seminar series on digital humanities, digital scholarship, and Southeast Asia. So today's session is going to be about open access, and we have 4 experts from across different disciplines and different places. So I'm going to introduce them very briefly. Then each of them will present their ideas for about 10 minutes. Following this, we will have a conversation between the speakers, and then later on, we will open up these for questions from the audience. So the speakers that we have with us today are coming from many different places, many different disciplines, from the social sciences, the humanities. Some of them work as researchers, some of them work in library settings, and they're all active in the field of either digital humanities, open access, open science. So the 4 people that I have, that we have today as our guests are, first of all, Dr. Natalie Pang, who is a principal investigator at the NUS Center for Trusted Internet and Community, and a senior lecturer at the Department of Communications and New Media, both at the National University of Singapore. And she's also active in researching areas from digital citizenship to digital humanities, and she teaches modules on digital research methods. Then we've got Mr. B Alayon, who is very active in the fields of library and data collection in the Philippines. He heads a library and data bank, and he's also part-time faculty at the University of San Agustin and the Central Philippine University. He's currently also the president of the International Association of Aquatic and Marine Science Libraries and Information Centers. We have also Dr. Erwin, Irawan, who is well known as one of the advocates for open science and open access in Indonesia. He's a lecturer and researcher in hydrogeology with the Faculty of Earth Sciences and Technology at ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung. And he focuses on water quality research and in communicating his ideas on how open science should be carried out throughout the world. And finally, we've got Dr. Daniel Chan, who is a linguist by training, a French teacher by practice, and he's the editor-in-chief of the Electronic Journal of Foreign Language and Teaching. So as you see, we have people that are across disciplinary positions, from open access journals, libraries, researchers, and from many different disciplines. So without further ado, I'm going to give now the space to Dr. Dasapta, who will speak for 10 minutes. So Dr. Dasapta, the digital floor is all yours.
Thank you, Miguel, for the introduction. I will share my screen. Okay, can you all see your screen? See my screen? Yeah. Miguel, can you confirm that?
Yes,
you can
it's working.
Sorry, we can all see you bright and clear. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, just 3 weeks ago, I was invited in the panel by NASP, an organization who advocate for a researcher from the Global South, mainly from Africa and Southeast Asia. And this is my slide that I try to make a conclusion about the challenges and what we can do to solve the problem. For your information, this meeting is mostly attended by panels from African countries. So they have all this problem from the skills to share their data and information, and then the access to internet, access to resources, and then they also have the policy who is not in favor of pushing them to develop their research. So this is the kind of a brief picture of the problem and how technology can solve it. So the INA-SP and Author Aid is setting up a platform for the Global South countries, researchers from Global South country to provide a platform that they all can speak to communicate with each other to develop their research and their activity, and also in knowledge sharing. So this is a slide for 3 weeks ago. And then the other slide is this one. This is for today. So what happened in Indonesia? This is the slide. Okay, so I make a little bit of joke, a rhyming joke between digital and Neanderthal scholarship. So this is my title, Scholarship in Indonesia, Crossing Between Digital and Neanderthal Mind. So why Neanderthal? Neanderthal is an archaic form of human that lived maybe from 200,000 to 40,000 years ago. They're all extinct now, don't worry. So this is the kind of a brief profile of their profile. So they have a similar brain volume like us, and then so they can think, they can make their own tools, and then they can also hunt. So they systematically can set up their groups to hunt animals for their food, and then they are very strong, yeah. And then due to their low ability to adapt with the environment, they extinct 40,000 years ago. So this is Neanderthal. So what happened in the other side, the scholarship in Indonesia in digital world? So this is kind of because I'm a geologist, I just draw the landscape. When people talk about landscape, and then my brain starts to convert it to a picture of mountains and valleys. So we have pretty much all tools that we can use to develop our research. So we have this, maybe from the tallest part, we have 1600 plus academic journal according to DOAG. So Indonesia is the first based on the sum of the open access journal. The second is United Kingdom. And then we also have 337 plus institutional repository. I don't think, according to OpenGOR, right? But I don't think the number is this low. I think there are many other institutional repositories that are not registered with the OpenGOR. And then we also have this national data repository hosted by the Indonesian Science Foundations. We also have our own indexing technology, so we can look for any all documents that is digital in all journals and all institutional repository that publish within Indonesian region. We have these two indexing technology, and then we also have journal accreditation. So we have this institution that accredit that assess journal management. I don't think many countries have this, but we have this, yeah, journal accreditation body. So most of the journal will set up their system to fit into the assessment system of our journal accreditation. And we have this avid community journal of journal managers called the RGI that they are very, very proactive in skill sharing and rapid outreach about using the platform. Just like this, we have also open source platforms. This is two major open source platforms that are used by most of the Indonesian journal and ER. So what happened after we have this landscape? Over time, each mountain contains abundant resources, right? Like geothermal, gold mine. This is an analogy of the data and the information. Over time, those data and those information is a gold mine, right? And then volcano also brings fertile soil. So we hope that this infrastructure, these tools that we have, can nourish the life of the researchers and also the research itself on a fertile ground. But what happened? Unfortunately, we are going downstream. So instead of upstream, right? So our metric, our assessment system, our rank and promotion system, our incentive system is all going downstream, right? Based on metric assessment, right? So in Indonesia, the WOS, Web of Science, Scopus indexing, age index, and then Simango quartile is one of those things that are being the focus of the researchers. You see, instead of we going upstream, how to improve our research, we're going downstream. Yeah, we only see the outputs, see the metrics, and how we can fulfill the requirement from the rank and promotion regulation and so on. And also we have this World University ranking that is, I think this ranking has this criteria that instead of make the institution in Indonesia going up, instead of that, I think we kind of going stay at the same place or maybe going down, because all the criteria is not, it's not really the main criteria that we have in Indonesia. And we have this problem that way, the way of our problem, then that we should solve it. And then this is the criteria that used by the World University ranking. So this kind of the two roads that cannot be deal at the same time. And also, just recently, the last bit is the IPR, intellectual property rights. So all the researchers, because of their still going down, they only look for metric. They forget to learn the basic about IPR. So they know about open access journal, they know about non-open access journal, but they also publish books, but they don't have the basic of don't understand the basic of IPR. So that's another problem that we have in Indonesia. I think that's all, Miguel, from me to kind of briefly tell a story about what happened in Indonesia.
Thank you so much for that diagram and for that introduction to the problems and the challenges of open science in Indonesia. So now we give the digital floor to our second speaker. So Dr. Natalie Pang, over to you.
Thank you, Miguel. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much, NUS Libraries, for inviting me as well. So I guess just to set a bit of a context in my 10-minute sharing, where I'm coming from and the kind of context I'll be making these comments from. So I'm a researcher, a senior lecturer at CNM, as well as investigator at CITIC, which is a research center based at NUS. And a lot of my work, I guess, focus on using digital research methods. So on the topic of scholarship and the communications of research, for me, open access has been a very positive thing. But I'll come to the challenges in a while. It's positive because I think, especially in times where we need to make certain research findings very quickly accessible, going through the open access way is actually very beneficial. My record for publishing a journal paper is that, it was I think in press for about 2 years before it actually came out. So, I mean, by the time, especially I think for many of us who work in the digital research area, this is kind of like a paradox, right? Because so much of our work evolves so quickly. I mean, even platforms wise, and the kinds of digital platforms that we do research on actually has changed a lot, right? By the time our papers are published, it's accessible to the research community, it's accessible to the practitioners, it's already outdated. So open access is definitely something that's good. So but what are the challenges? So yeah, and the other point I'd like to make is, of course, this goes back to my belief that if we are paying for research, and for academic research especially, that's already funded, through public funds and so on, we really need to make it very publicly accessible to make an impact. So so yeah, open access, I think, plays a role in the democratization of research for both the research community as well as the public. However, I think even after even though open access publishing, open access research has been developing for some years, there are some challenges that still remain. There are many other challenges which I'm sure the speakers after me, as well as Dasapta, actually has already talked about. But what's most salient to me is that there are some I guess for-profit open access journals as well as predatory journals actually has made it quite difficult for researchers, especially junior researchers, right, to identify good open access journals to work with. It's kind of like wading in the dark, right, because they're not sure which open access journal are the right ones or the credible ones to work with. There are some, I guess, there are some tools that's out there to help us, like the Bills list, which actually list out, the predatory journals that's out there. But yeah, it's sometimes not without controversy as well, because yeah, there are some journals that's listed there that not everyone agree that is predatory. But yeah, I mean, the main point I want to make is that it is kind of like a mixed marketplace, right? Where as researchers, we are not sure which journals are the good ones to work with, and which are the bad ones. And of course, that is also very much informed by, I guess, the pressure to, be seen as like doing something to contribute to the QS rankings, or the Times Higher Education University rankings, and that comes with, actually, I guess, the pressure to publish in well-known journals instead of open access journals, which tend to be younger and less well-known. The other thing I like to highlight, which is really a key challenge with for researchers, especially junior ones, right? And also, I guess, for researchers that come from certain disciplines, is that there's this issue of funding limitation, because, yeah, I mean, open access journals, in order to publish in them and to make the manuscripts, in fact, open access usually comes at cost. So not every institution, not every discipline, or research priority, right, or at the national level, actually really favor researchers to publish in those journals. So again, this is me sharing this, I guess, lessons from a very researcher, practitioner point of view. So yeah, I mean, I think all these factors, right, really result in undermining the quality of open access journals, and even with good ones that's out there, right, they are not always recognized to be good open access journals. So yeah, after I just spent about 5 minutes reflecting on challenges publishing in open access. But I just want to also, I guess, draw lessons from a research project I've done recently on built heritage and landmarks in Singapore. So this was a project that I was done when I was still at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. It's a typical survey where the aim of the survey was to understand what people thought about various. I think there were list of like 50 or so built heritage and landmarks in Singapore. So it's essentially we have a lot of data points about what people perceive about heritage cultural heritage landmarks in Singapore. So just very quickly, I would like to bring you to the site. Yeah, I mean, you are looking at the website now that I was developing in partnership with NUS Libraries. So when we had the survey, so this is a quick reflection on visualizations, right? When we had the survey findings out, I remember writing up, the statistical findings and so on. And we realized actually at that point, it was kind of an epiphany that actually if we visualize the results differently, it can lead to actually a very different set of interpretations about what these findings are. So I think this is, I guess the role of digital humanities and how important it is to explore different ways to present, your research and findings. So the NUS Digital Scholarship Lab did a fantastic job. So they basically took all of the data points we had, visualized them on a map, right? So for instance, if you say click on any landmark of finding or built heritage, right, that we included in our survey, you'll be able to actually get actually information in context, right? A little bit of background of what this landmark is and how, respondents in different age group actually evaluated this particular site. So I only have 2 minutes left, so I don't have much time to show you much of it, but you can go to the NUS Digital Scholarship Lab and be able to find this visualization. So let me just go back to my slide very quickly. So this is my last slide. Key lessons for me is, as I mentioned earlier, as a researcher, for me, it's always important to look at and think about different ways to make research accessible, not just for the academic community, but also for the public, right? As I mentioned, sometimes visualization itself, I think, is the finding. You can have your findings from your research, but think about how your visualization can be part of the output, because they can help the public interpret the findings. They can help practitioners to do their work as well. I just want to also acknowledge how important it is for researchers to work with academic libraries, right, as an essential partner. I think, given the challenges of open access, libraries and even researchers ourselves, we have explored self-archiving options. For instance, we archive preprints of our manuscript and make them available. But we have to think about how to develop communication plans for maximum impact as well. So, for instance, in the context of this project, I also work with the media to put out a number of commentaries so that they will pay attention. People will pay attention to the research and come to read the full paper. So I think my time is up, and that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a really fascinating overview of the challenges, the paradoxes of open access publishing, and a really interesting look also into your own research. So thank you very much for that. We now move on to our third speaker. So now we have B Alayon from the Philippines. So Stephen, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be talking about the digital scholarship and open access status in the Philippines. Okay, this is the outline, and I'll try to fix this one in 10 minutes. So for IFLA, we have they have provided how libraries can contribute to the UN agenda for providing access and opportunity for all. So based on the different United Sustainable Development Goals, they have identified what libraries can contribute. So here's also the statement of IFLA on open access, and it calls for a rigorous system, long-term preservation, freedom from censorship, information literacy, including expanding bandwidth and infrastructure. So my proposal is that we need digital contents and materials from libraries, archives, and museums for an literate society. In an information society, for us to have an improved governance so that it will lead to a sustainable development. So during the former President Aquino, he emphasized the reforms on transparency and accountability through digitization and through digital reforms. So they made up the digital strategy for the country, and then they identified that we should have a reliable, affordable, and secure information access in the Philippines, and there should be accountability and excellence. So during they provided the 7 guiding principles of the Philippine Strategic ICT Roadmap. And one is the availability, accessibility, and development of digital content. In an Philippine information society, we need digital contents that includes educational materials, national heritage collections, government information, research databases, collections in literature and history and entertainment. And we should also cater various Philippine languages. During the time of the current President Duterte, the National Broadband Plan was proposed by the DICT that includes investment in broadband infrastructure that focuses on the passage of the following, including open access and peering policy. So also in 2016, the Republic Act on providing free internet access to public places was acted. And now the DICT is very busy with the programs, especially at this situation. At first, they proposed to roll out a free Wi-Fi nationwide, and now they're trying to improve telco services to meet the new normal demands at the COVID situation. So I'd like to share to you the digitization and digital library initiatives of selected libraries in the Philippines. The EGF-funded project includes the Philippine e-Library project by the National Library of the Philippines. Okay. It's a collaborative project between NLP, UP, DOST, DA, and CHED. And it identifies the information needs of all sectors to provide a convenient, affordable, and efficient way of delivery of information. So the target is 24 million images should be available in eLive, and the priority is to digitize Filipiniana materials, or including theses and dissertations. Also, the Philippine eLive provided electronic access to different scientific journals, which was unluckily was discontinued in 2020. So then for the lessons learned by the National of the Library of the Philippines, they started digitization of rare books, rare maps, photographs, presidential papers, and other Filipiniana materials. Okay. At phase 1, they provide around 25 million pages were targeted, and it was achieved only in less than 1 year. However, there were problems encountered to include unreadable pages, too large output file, or damage sustained from the originals. So rework was done until 2007, and they realized that it's longer to perform quality control than to rescan. Okay. With the collaborator from DOST, they also provided their experience that the librarian had to check the scanned files that were not properly scanned, needs re-editing, or needs editing or rescanning, such as desqueuing and rescanning missing pages. Okay. For institutional repositories and digital library in the Philippines, let me show to you the current status from OpenDOAR. It's only in Southeast Asian countries, only Indonesia is included at top 10, 137 IRs. and it's this space that is 40% being used as software for IRs. In the Southeast Asia, this is the table. The table shows the different IRs by country, and it's Indonesia and Malaysia, followed by Thailand. That's on the top three, while Philippines lag at still 7 for the past years, 5 years, 5 to 10 years. So currently we have 6 to 7 active. What one is under development actually, and you have noticed that there are also other digital repositories that are not registered in the DOAR. I'll try to show to you the different IRs in the Philippines. This is a challenge, especially in the Philippines, which is visited by typhoon every year. I think 10 to 20 typhoons a year. And yeah, the devastation to libraries, this is the result. And some documents, for example, and books. And if you have remembered, a fire breaks out at UP Diliman campus that includes the faculty center. Okay, it houses actually the faculty of letters, and most of their collections were damaged. And also with the COVID situation, that most of the libraries are closed, and so digital libraries are in demand. So in in that fire from in UP Diliman, so the department offices of the College of Arts and Letters, faculty rooms of College of Social Sciences, and the UP Creative Writing Center. So most of their collections were lost with that fire. So there are three big universities in the Philippines that are member of UNILO, and they are encouraged to build institutional repositories. So it was actually the South Manila Consortium that started the digitization in the 1990s, where Filipiniana materials are the priority. So this is the beta for the University Archives and Records of UP Diliman, and later on they moved into digital archives at UPD. And then through funding from the Vleer UOS, they had digital research at UP System, digitization of their periodicals, and training at Digital Humanities. The promoter is Dr. Ramon Guillermo. So they had an open access repository of rare periodicals in UP Diliman. And yeah, it was funded by Vleer UOS. And also they had a workshop with Dagitab, Palihan sa Digital Humanidades. And also I'd like to highlight the Philippine Performance Archive. They're using e-prints in their repository. Okay, and you can browse by year, okay, by author, and they have an uncontrolled keywords, as the limitation for e-prints is that they provide a broad subject categories. So they also have provided a blog, which is blog@palabas.org. They try to archive performances, dances, okay? And these are the team that lead the program. Also, the UP Center for Ethnomusicology had a training for digitizing music and oral history. So these are the requirements, and the digitization of F. Landa Hocano collections of Central Philippine University. There's a talk between University of the Philippines, I think. I'd like to highlight other repositories such as College of Engineering Repository, UP Baguio Faculty and Publication Database, the De La Salle University Archives. They have their faculty, research and creative works, and they are currently building the Animo E repository. The Rizal Library Digital Repository is also on a beta testing, and they developed the Ateneo Manila University developed the Archium Ateneo, which is the institutional repository. Okay? They also provided the We4 magazine and the Philippine Epics and Ballads Archive. The high school department also made a memory project using DSpace, and Naga used Ateneo Electronic Repository of Abstracts. While the University of Santo Tomas provided the digital collections of historical, current publications, and archival collections. So they had the usc.edu.ph. Also, they have this is an example of their collections, and the UST heritage collections also. Benguet State University Digital Library is also good one, and St. Louis University. So I have limited time to yeah. So I'd like to last 30 seconds for the Filipinas Heritage Library collections for their ulahingan, and they're trying to digitize the sound files, retrato from the Filipinas Heritage Library, and they're also trying to collect the Philippine COVID Archive, the Lopez Museum, and the ABS-CBN Film Archives. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent overview of the many different challenges and the incredible range of projects that you guys have there in the Philippines. I'm also very pleased to see some of my friends there from the Performance Archive of the Philippines. I've added for our audience here a link to paulev.com NUS-LDS. So that's L as in library, digital scholarship. So you can go there and send your questions for the speakers later. Last but certainly not least, we move to the closing presentation of today, where we have Stephen Chan, who's going to now share his thoughts with us. So over to you. Daniel Chan, sorry, I got confused with the names of the speakers. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Thank you very much, Miguel. So hi, everyone. Thank you, NUS Libraries, and thank you, Esther, for inviting me to speak today at this seminar. I'm Daniel Chan from the NUS, and so I have an academic position as a senior lecturer of French at the Center for Language Studies. I'm also concurrently, I have a management role of assistant director at the same center. And today I'm speaking in my capacity as editor-in-chief of this academic journal called EFLT. EFLT, which stands for Electronic Journal of Foreign Language Teaching. So this journal has been around for about 17 years now, ever since the inaugural issue in December 2004. We have been publishing it bi-yearly, typically in June and in December, with 1 or 2 supplementary theme issues in most years. It's a peer-reviewed journal, and the main purpose of the journal is to disseminate as widely and as quickly as possible scholarly research findings that can be expected to have an impact or make a contribution to research and development in the field of second and foreign language teaching and learning. Give me a second. Sorry. So the disciplinary areas that we focus on is obviously second and foreign language teaching and learning. So these are the kinds of areas of inquiry and development that are covered. So mostly applied linguistics, if you may, or teaching pedagogy, theories of language and teaching, and so on. And most importantly, we seek to encourage and debates and promote innovation in teaching practices for languages other than English. So our past volumes have, for example, have focused on have covered languages, a diverse range of languages, ranging from Arabic, Malay, Hindu. So on the left you see Asian languages, on the right non-Asian languages, including European languages, Russian, and so on. So yeah, quite a big diversity of languages covered by our journals. Our journal is also quite unique in that we offer a multilingual platform for the publication of scholarly work. So this means that contributors can submit manuscripts not only in English, but also in any of the 13 languages that we currently teach at the Center for Language Studies. So this covers about 10 languages, 10 Asian languages. In the first 2 rows, Arabic, Hindi, Tamil, Thai, Vietnamese, Indonesian, Malay, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, and 3 European languages. So any submissions in these 13 languages will be accepted. And we also undertake to reach a wider range of audience, of readers, including academics, researchers, practitioners, and other professionals who are specializing in languages other than English. So what are the benefits of being in an electronic journal that's at the same time open access? As an electronic journal, we seek to exploit the advantages of internet technologies to deliver content and provide reading support to a wide audience in Asia and the rest of the world. So you can easily download papers from the internet from our website. And as an open access journal, the content is freely available without charge to the use of any institution. So any user is allowed to read, download, copy, distribute, print, search, or link to the full text of the articles, use them for any lawful purposes without having to ask for permission from the publisher or the author. Another benefit is that there's an increased visibility and exposure. So our journal is available can be searched on Google, so you can reach potential academic contributors as well as interested readers who are interested in the field. The global impact. It is not surprising that as we become more established, we also become well known to language teachers from all the continents in the world. So we have been receiving contributions from South America, Chile, Brazil, Middle East, African countries like Iran, Palestine, Egypt, Ethiopia, South Africa. And as a result, there's a natural selection of quality submissions. Over the past 10 years alone, we have seen at least a threefold increase in the number of submissions. In 2010, for example, there were 91 papers received, and in 2019, so 9 years last year, we have received 314 papers. This also means that the rejection rate has been constantly on the increase. We rejected about 33% of the papers in 2005, and 5 years later, in 2010, the rate went up to 87%. 2015 was 90%, and last year was 93%. The increased visibility will also mean that the citation rates have been pushed and driven upwards. So taking the value for a four-year period, in 2012, the index was 0.174, and in 2018, it was 0.614. Another benefit is that it keeps the cost really low. This publishing model allows us to make research information available to all readers at zero cost. All published articles are available in readily accessible PDF format. The electronic format of our journal also ensures that we keep the production costs to a minimum, and access can be granted free to anyone and everyone to the journal. Now, the management of the EFLT is this is more a disadvantage, is that it's managed by an editorial team that is made up mostly of faculty members at the Center for Language Studies. In other words, on top of our teaching duties and research duties, we have to also manage this publication of this journal. We have got an editorial board that's, as you can see, made up mostly of colleagues in the center, as well as an international advisory board that is from a lot of top universities around the world. The content is readily available via Google search and on all these databases, such as Scopus, Modern Language Association, International Bibliography, Directory of Open Access Journals, and so on. If you do a search on the DOAJ, which is a Directory of Open Access Journals, you will see that we are like 8 journals who have been listed on this database. 8 journal in the field of foreign languages, and also the first Asian foreign language journal in this database. Possibly the only Asian journal that does not focus solely on English as a foreign language. The publication process, so like I said, we have internal review. We have an editorial board that gets assigned the papers that come in to decide whether the papers can be are suitable for external review or be rejected at that stage. And then we will require 2 anonymous expert reviewers to look at the papers to decide if the papers need to be revised before publications. So this whole process takes usually about a couple of months, given that the editorial board members have also got duties teaching and doing research. So we are not managed by an external editorial publishing house, for example. So yeah, so this takes time. And then there are some concerns about the publication models. Okay, so how much time do I have? Yeah, great. Okay, so there's a growing interest in the open access publication model, of course. And obviously, there's this wish that the traditional subscription-based publication model will slowly be replaced by this open access system. But there's some areas of concern is that whether is the journal specialized in the topic of disciplinary research that the authors are looking at, and is the journal widely circulated? Is it well read and contributed by leading scholars in the field? Does it have a high impact factor with an excellent academic reputation? How fast the journal is able to publish submissions if accepted? How selective is it? Is it only a small percentage of submissions that are published? And is it indexed in notable databases? So with this, yeah, so you can see that earlier on, I think Natalie brought up a point about whether open access leads to speedier publications. So yeah, there's open access and there's open access. So I would say that this does not necessarily mean that open access would lead to speedier publications, because it depends on who manages the publications and what's the process behind it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again for presenting that work with us, and also for presenting this different perspective from the side of the editor of a journal. I think one of the things that is really has been fascinating for me listening to all of you over the past 40 minutes or so is to see the many different issues that seem to crop up in different areas, and also how these, in some ways, are experienced slightly differently by people in different areas of research. So we've heard from people who are active primarily as researchers, from people who are coordinating institutional repositories, and also from people who are at the helm of open access journals. So I think there's plenty to be shared from these different experiences, plenty that we can learn also from each other. So in order to open up the conversation, what we're going to do now is I have just a question for all of you to get the ball rolling. And then after that, we'll open to discussion either within the panel here and also from our audience via YouTube. So one thing that struck me as I was listening to all of your presentations is that many of you all did, in some cases, a historical overview, if we can call it such, about the different kinds of issues that your disciplines or your countries have experienced, or the many different kind of challenges that the places where you are at the moment institutionally are experiencing. But I'm also wondering, what is your ideal for the future? So I think that often open access is linked to a particular kind of idealism. And I think that that really came through in all the presentations. That, you know, those of us who are in the open access space, we believe in the many possible goods of open access, how it can, as Natalie was saying, it can also provide different ways of visualizing the same data set. I think that's something like really interesting to see, how also there's different public participation, how it can also engage scientists more broadly within a particular research community, as Dasapta was reminding us, how it can also encourage people from many different disciplines within the same university to be active in this. As Stephen was saying, and as Daniel also brought to our attention, it can also really highlight the visibility of different research projects. So I think that we can all agree that there are some benefits of these different attitudes towards open access. There are also many challenges, and I'm not going to summarize everything, but there are certain things that I think were constant themes throughout this presentation. We heard from Dasapta about this contradiction between two different mindsets that don't agree, and sometimes what's better for science is not necessarily what the institutions want or encourage. So the researchers are caught in these in between these two different attitudes. And we saw some of that also in Natalie's presentation, where she was bringing also to our attention this problem of the predatory journals, for example, or how sometimes there are these trade-offs, either between quality and access, or between financial means to publish something in open access, or the ability to really make it usable across many different contexts. And we saw also in the case of Stephen's presentation, the many different challenges that you see in the Philippines, ranging also from the different disasters that can strike an institution to the ways in which people have responded to those challenges. And finally, Daniel, one thing that you also mentioned that I think was really interesting to see is the kind of like the management costs, which I think is sometimes hidden. So when we're thinking about these idealistic aspects of open access, we tend to forget perhaps that there are many different costs, there are many different challenges that this creates in terms of time, also for the people who are managing these things. So my question, to bring this to a question, is what is your ideal of open access in the future? So many of you have presented us with this overview of where the field is at, the many problems. But if you could also shape these different fields in a few years from now, 5 to 10 years from the present, what does the ideal future look like from your different contexts? What would you like to see happening? How can we tackle all these complicated problems that you've described to us? So, just to make things easier, I'm going to ask people to respond in the same order that they presented, since unfortunately we cannot really see everyone in the same room. One of the unfortunate aspects of meeting virtually. So again, the question is, how does the ideal future look like from where you're standing? So Dasapta, if you could share your thoughts with us, please.
Yeah. So in my opinion, to keep the system, the infrastructure is sustainable, we need to have sustainable support, and that would be the national, the state that should support the infrastructure, because most of, in case of Indonesia, most of the research funding came from the public, so it should be bring back to the public by the government. Yeah, and we have those. We already have those, but we don't have the detailed regulation about how to use the infrastructure to the benefit of the society. That's all.
Thank you very much. Natalie?
Thank you for the question. My comment is somewhat similar. For me, it's really about the business model, who pays for open access. And I think, going back to Daniel's comment, I don't mean that all open access journals are predatory, but some predatory journals, right, give the entire market of open access journals a bad name. And I think, especially junior researchers, they can't differentiate. And I really feel that in terms of ideals and how I wish for the whole scene to develop is that I guess academic libraries and academic institutions, as well as funding agencies, really take stock of what they are funding, and also I guess prioritize making knowledge accessible. So, so to me, it's a question of a sustainable funding model in both like a progressive and protective sense. Progressive because we need to make it sustainable, and we have to rethink how and what funds are used for. And I think a protective sense in the context of actually protecting the quality as well as protecting the entire community as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So then we move on to Stephen.
Regarding the open access, yeah, we need to have a balance between academic libraries or institutional libraries to have subscriptions, especially for now that the demand for digital resources is high because of the COVID situation and the distance learning, the blended learning models, and also the big journals and publishers are also aggressive in their new business model of charging article processing charge with high article processing charges like $1,500 to $3,500, and researchers and faculty from developing countries would not be able to pay for that. So and the research funding is also very limited for their research, and not including payment for article charges. So also the library should be an advocate of open access, and they try to promote society or university-based journals, so that they can promote access to these articles, also to increase the prestige of their university journals. So that's all.
Thank you. And Daniel?
Yeah, I agree with Stephen about the cost issue. So cost is a very big issue. Funding, like Natalie said, a lot of young researchers struggle with that. And so at the same time, we have tried, for example, in our case, to look to work with a major publishing house that will take over the management workload, and then we would just handle the reviewing process. But the charges that they are quoting us is a little bit inaccessible for us. And the future would preferably have there will be, I would think of automated, let's say, management websites where authors can upload their submissions, and then that the management can be taken over by some automated processes within the websites.
Thank you. So since there seem to be quite a lot of questions from the audience, I'm going to move on to these questions directly. And one of the questions that we see here is perhaps a really common question when people talk about open access, and something where we would love to hear our panelists' opinion. So somebody asks, as researchers who are for open access, what's your opinion on websites that give free access to journals? And they give a couple of examples, but we can think of many others. And so what do you all think about this?
Me? Starting with me?
Sure. So I think we can try to keep the same order, just so that we don't, it's hard to signal to, like, who's on your right and left. We're all in this chaotic cyberspace. So please.
Yeah, so in my opinion, using Sci-Hub and LibGen or any other pirate sites is illegal. Even for myself, that is not very in favor of commercial publisher, but still using Sci-Hub and LibGen is still still illegal for me. But so the act of the action from Sci-Hub and LibGen can be slightly decreased or significantly decreased if most of the researchers do the self-archiving. So the readers always have the open access version of any other articles that they want to read. Right? Yeah.
So Natalie, would you like to go next?
Yes, I mean, I don't know what else I can add to that. Yes, it's definitely illegal. But I think it does. I mean, the fact that these communities continue to thrive, right, despite the legal ramifications, do point to the need for open access. And I mean, it goes back to your first question about how do we make it sustainable, right? Yeah.
What about I mean, here there's a gray area. So the examples of in the question are definitely illegal, but there are perhaps some other gray area websites where people can also self-archive their work. So which might or might not go against the policies of a specific journal, but it's part of academic practice. So what's your take on that, though, in this more kind of gray area?
Yeah, so I think I think a number of researchers as well as institutions are doing it, right? They self-archive preprints, and if there's an article that you like to access, you can actually get the preprints from the institutions and even sometimes the website of the researcher. So I definitely think that that's a great practice. We should support that.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, as librarians, yeah, we have the role, the challenge of as promoters of open access and maintaining institutional repositories. So faculty and researchers should be encouraged to deposit their research publications in a repository, and also we should encourage our users to use libraries. As libraries have this consortium, we can actually have interlibrary loan with other libraries, not only from limited to your country. I'll share to you in my slides in the PDF when I sent that. There are different tools that you can that are legal and that still respect copyright, which are repositories, and IFLA has resource sharing mechanism that doesn't violate copyright. That's all.
So Daniel?
Yeah, it's definitely illegal because it bypasses all the copyright laws. But at the same time, it's also very dangerous because some of these websites come with I don't know, spyware or things like that. So it's actually dangerous as well, not just illegal.
Thank you. So we have some specific questions to some of the speakers. So the first one that I'll read out is to Stephen. So one of our audience members asks, is there any effort in the Philippines to develop common standards or shared resources for development of these archives and heritage resources?
Yeah, the Philippine eLib is actually should have been the national portal for research from the National Library, from UP System, from Department of Science and Technology, Agriculture. So, however, most of the initiatives are institutional based or university based, and we're just using different platforms and institutional repository software. Hopefully, we can have they can be harvested and placed into one portal. For example, UP is developing using VuFind for their discovery services to collect all to search multiple catalogs and repositories. That's all.
Thank you. So we have a question now for Daniel. So did the team set out to deliberately improve its impact? And if so, what are some of the most important steps that you think really helped in achieving this change?
I don't think we did anything special to try to deliberately improve the impact factor. I just think that word of mouth got around, and at one point we started getting a lot of submissions from a particular country. Yeah, so you can tell that it's more things that are happening beyond our control. We do try to invite well-known scholars to contribute to publish in our journal, and that would also help because the name would obviously carry some weight. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Question for Dasapta is: could you speak a little bit more about the institutional incentives and speak more about how they go against the needs, perhaps, of open science?
Yeah, institutional incentives. So the way I see from Indonesian perspective, the incentive comes in a different way. One of them is by publishing in top journals. That's why I draw those indexing services and Shimago quartile in my picture. So that is how we get the incentive. However, we don't get incentive if we do more wider activity than just publish our material to those top journals, like posting the data for data citations and then creating a repository for the research so people can access all the materials. Yeah. Because we have another problem here is the allegation of self-plagiarism. If we put something other than to the journal, it's kind of messed up way of thinking. Yeah, so that's why also I put a another picture, and another paper that I wrote about how open access funding or non-open access funding can be both a problem, since most of the money come from the government and most of the benefits goes to the commercial publisher, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's also a question here about, I mean, we've already addressed this to a certain extent, but people seem to be quite interested in the problem of the predatory journals. And I mean, here in the chat that the audience cannot see, we had some discussion between group members, but can I ask Natalie to perhaps add a few more thoughts on this? Especially the question that triggered this was, how can people be educated, especially younger, perhaps more vulnerable researchers, on the perils of predatory journals?
Thanks for the question. I think there's a number of initiatives out there available for people to check on predatory journals. For instance, there's the Bell's list of predatory journals that's published publicly available. I think Dasapta also shared like thinkchecksummit.org, right, which can be used. But I think the question of publishing to me is, especially publishing in the open access community, it's also a question of mentorship for junior researchers, because I think we really need to have mentors that are also well informed about good open access journals, and and also mentor younger researchers, junior researchers, in terms of how to make a lasting impact, and come up with like a publication strategy, right? I feel that despite the community having grown for some time, but having been growing for some time, we still do not have enough senior researchers that are well informed about the benefits of open access publishing. So I think, going back to your earlier question, I quite like your earlier question about what is the future. I think the future will look like have like not just having a sustainable and good funding model for open access that supports open access publishing, but also having a good community of researchers and practitioners, librarians that's well informed about where to go, what to do, especially for junior researchers.
Thank you. We've got a question here from the audience also on the risks. So I guess that we've been also emphasizing all the advantages, some of the problems, but one of our audience members asked us, what will be the consequences or concerns when we utilize open access resources? Are there any risks? Do you have any advice on how to use them effectively? And anybody can answer this question.
Miguel, can I address this question? Because just recently, the previous week, I was just sending out some materials about intellectual property rights, the basic of IPR for the lecturers in my university. So about the risk to use open access resources, I think there will be at least two sides that should be addressed. One is the quality of the open access resources itself. So that's why I keep advocating to my community that the reader should be also critical to the materials, not even if it's published in Nature, because at some papers randomly, I can pick some paper randomly, even if it published in Nature. I can find any raw data as in to support the the analysis. So that's why the reader should also be critical. That's one, and the other one is the side of the copyright side. So the reader must know the position of the open access document, because sometimes people think that if if they got the document from Sci-Hub or from ResearchGate, and then they immediately say it was open access. It's not, right? So at least two sides, the content and also the copyright. I think the other panels can add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that that distinction also perhaps of how open access is not just one thing, but it means it's a category of different ways of participating in openness. So is there anybody else who would like to respond to this question? Otherwise, I actually have maybe a follow-up latching on to these risks. So one thing that I think some people are concerned, some researchers as well, is in citation counts and impact factor. So in some ways, it's perhaps a measure that we sometimes need to use, but there's also a danger in this measure, and it's in some ways also connected to open access. So the more there are open access journals, it's easier to see who cites, who gets cited more, and don't get me wrong, I do think that in certain disciplines this makes a lot of sense, but there are also at least for my own quarter, I'm in a discipline where people don't get cited as much as perhaps in hydrogeology or in the natural sciences. So I wonder, are there risks to the metrics that we use for evaluating the success of openness?
Maybe I can take that. Yes, I think when we rely and only rely on metrics, obviously, we risk marginalizing certain disciplines, especially interdisciplinary kind of work. And I mean, the fact that we are having this Zoom meeting right now, right, is obviously because of the pandemic, which requires interdisciplinary interventions and interdisciplinary resources and research. And yeah, I do think that if we only rely on metrics as the measure of our quality of our research, that can be very myopic and short term, in my opinion. So the risk is that we risk actually putting resources and recognizing important piece of work, important areas of research.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question also here. One of our audience members asks, should open access be synonymous to free education? Most of your examples for open access are coming from a university setting. What if someone who isn't enrolled actually wants to access specific materials? Should librarians be the ones to fight for free quality education?
Yeah, in my presentation, actually, I just covered the university, but I have reserved slides for institutional repositories from international organizations, NGOs. They are actually the one also who are advocates of open access and providing free access to their resources. So it provides materials that are useful for the public, from health to agriculture, to fisheries, for example. So and librarians are have a big role in promoting this to their users. We're also trying to deposit it in repositories in behalf of the researchers, and adding metadata for our users to retrieve it using common practice of Google, using Google to search for articles.
Thank you. There's a maybe connected question on perhaps another controversial issue, which is the role of commercial publishers. So one person asks how to face commercial publishers which are always increasing their subscription. So what is the connection between subscription and open access?
There are big libraries that negotiate the subscription rate for academic journals, and to balance that, also the libraries try to subscribe and maintain core titles. At the same time, they're trying to promote open access through the repository by by encouraging the researchers and faculty to deposit their articles in them. And yeah, someone mentioned that APC can be waived from developing countries in Southeast Asia, maybe except Singapore. Yeah, I think you can negotiate with the publisher to waive for APC, especially for those in developing countries.
Dasapta, actually, could you also ask for your perspective on this? I know that also, Indonesia recently has also increased the spending on subscription to journals. So I wonder, what's your, how does this fit with the previous, image that you drew for us? Where is this in your diagram?
It depends to the government, really. If the government still think that the branding is important aside to the content, and then we cannot tell them to negotiate, right? But if the government have switched perception about the quality of the research, and then we can push them to negotiate, just like several other countries, right? Because I have this analogy about this thing. Everyone is asking about how good we are driving, but the only thing that we are talking about is the brand of the car, right? It's not related to the skill of driving, really, right? So, yeah, I think, I would agree with Stefan that the government should negotiate, because, as I said, the party who get most of the money is the commercial publisher, and the one that pays the most of the money is the government. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perhaps to wrap up, as we come towards the end of the session, I can also ask if there is anything else that you would like to ask each other, or any other response to some of the topics that we've covered so far. Any other intervention from any of our panelists?
Yeah, can I ask Daniel about some? You said that your journal includes 10 languages, right? So people can submit their manuscript other than English, but
Yes.
you're still on Scopus, right?
Yes.
Because there's some myth, I think it's a hoax in Indonesia, that a journal that should be indexed, journal who wants to be indexed by Scopus should be English-based journal.
I'm not sure about that, but because we are, after all, a journal that publishes on the topic of foreign language education, so it makes a lot of sense for these for these research to be published in the individual languages themselves. Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly about the Scopus. Should be a myth, because we are still in Scopus, as I have just.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I have a question for Stephen, because you were sharing about heritage, which is something I'm very interested in. And I think especially with smaller, humanities, data, corpuses of data, one thing that we always struggle with is actually deciding what to record in the, as metadata, or, having a common framework that we can use to actually make sense of the cultural heritage in the data. I was wondering from Philippines whether there's any kind of work to try to come up with a framework for the different kinds of heritage data sets that you have, that you showed earlier.
Yeah, I think the group for the archivists are the one trying to address that. Although there are available schema for heritage collections, as most of the collections in the heritage, like oral history, uh, um, um, from realia. So it differs sometimes, and you cannot just have one metadata for one set of metadata for each. And the schema.org has, I think, different proposed schema for metadata that can be used to organize materials for the humanities.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Is there any other closing intervention? We're already towards the end of our session. So if there's anybody else that like to add something, please do so. Otherwise, one thing I want to say, just to bring this to a close, there was something that Natalie mentioned earlier, that you said, we're meeting here because of the pandemic. And I think that's partially true. But on the other hand, I also think that, of course, this is a terrible situation that we are all facing and enduring in different ways. But one thing that it has shown to different communities is that we can meet in different spaces and do events like this one that we would have probably not done otherwise. One thing is that we are very interested now in bringing this seminar series to more people and having more people from across Southeast Asia. So, perhaps in normal times, it's easier to only rely on the people who are physically in a country. But I think that we really have a lot to learn about different institutional contexts, different histories of how, public policy, how institutional contexts shape how we think about our work. And the other thing that I absolutely love of a panel like this one is to get people from across the disciplines. So one thing that I really appreciate, and I want to thank you again for sharing your thoughts with us, is that you are all experts from many different fields. So we see many areas of commonality, but I think we also can learn a lot about things that are different in other places. So for me, that's really kind of one of the goals of these kinds of events, these kinds of spaces, is to bring this dialogue forth. So hopefully it's something that will not end in this Zoom session, but that in the future we'll continue to meet both offline and online to talk about open access. And, of course, being about open access, this is publicly available. And we have also plenty of resources from many people here in the chat that will make available to the audience. So with that, I'll just once again thank all of you here in our panel, as well as all our viewers on YouTube. So thank you. Thank you for doing this, and we look forward to having you again at some other time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Gaetan, for the cards.
Yeah. Yes, that also reminds me to thank also the digital scholarship team at NUS Library, who have been doing this amazing work in the background, organizing this event. So both to Gaetan and to Esther and to Richard, thank you so much for all the work coordinating things in the background and making sure that this runs smoothly. So thank you, everyone, and we'll keep you posted on our next event in this digital scholarship series. So thank you, and see you soon.